Hello, welcome to the 5th day of March 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily good life meditation. I'm feeling a little off track this morning because I got up late. I actually slept in. My alarm always goes off at 5 a.m. and it went off at 5 a.m. and I did wake up beforehand, my usual morning wake up, but it wasn't as bad as usual. It's the weekend after all. It's better on the weekends, but I did wake up nonetheless. But the thing is, when the alarm went off, I turned it off and I put my head back on the pillow, and I slept in another 15 minutes. So I'm currently 15 minutes off schedule, and it's like. It's just like everything's off, right? Venus is too high in the sky, out the window. The sun, after I got out of the shower, the sun is beginning to come up. It's lightening the sky. That's so funny. I never really imagined I would become a person who is so tied to a particular schedule. Huh. Surprising myself. Yeah, the very idea of like sleeping in like for 2 hours on a weekend is an impossible notion to me. I mean, I don't know if anybody actually does that. That's what I hear. You have the impression that you get from the commercials and the TV shows is that it's the weekend. I'm gonna sleep till noon. Just can't imagine doing that. Creature of habit. Anyway, this is what I do every day. Speaking of creature of habit, reminding myself of my objectives and principles as I start the day, and thinking about how I did these yesterday. So let's do it. Yesterday was a really good day of work. I set for myself on Thursday night. Yesterday was Friday. On Thursday night, I set for myself a very clear and aggressive agenda for Friday. I had no meetings on Friday. I wound up having one impromptu meeting, but that only took about 15, 20 minutes. And even when I went to bed that night, I said, Kurt, that's a lot of. You're planning to do a lot of work in one day, like half a week's worth of work in one day, because I knew I wouldn't have any meetings. Well, guess what? I did it. I completed all of those items, or at least took all of them to the point that as far as they could possibly go, before there was nothing more to do without input from others. And I really felt good about that. I love a good productive day at work. And then really didn't have any chance to exercise my principles or objectives yesterday. Well, I mean, my objectives, I'm always exercising. I'm always striving for the good life. But I didn't have any chance. There was no really ambush situations that happened during the day. Which is, the case when you're removed from the fray, as I was. It's those human interactions that are the fray. Okay, let's do the good life. I have 7 objectives, and these are to always have my affairs in order so that if I pass today, my wife and daughter will be taken care of to the best of my ability. My relationships are in good order. I don't leave people wondering about whether I love them, and that my life's work is a package deal, and we'll be able. It's a message in a bottle with a cork on top, and all it takes is a good jostle of life to stead it falling into the sea. It won't last forever. Cork, after all. Glass, after all. But it's my message in a bottle. My book. Okay, the second thing is to make a good and effective use of my time. Maybe that's why I didn't like sleeping in. Sleeping in doesn't feel like a good use of time. When I've had a plenty of sleep, when I've had a full allotment of a night's sleep, adding extra to it seems like it's taking away from the valuable time of life. So I strive to make good use of time. That's why I spend most of my time doing stuff that I think is worthwhile. At this point in my life is working, keeping the house maintained, spending time with my family, and reading my books, and deliberating on what I read. And of course working on my own work, my own books. That's something I could spend more time on. The one book, The Good Life, it's out there, but I'm not pleased with it. It has more editing than it needs to do. It's sitting on a shelf waiting for me to edit it more. I need to spend more time with that. See, I could have spent that 15 minutes sleeping in working on that. Now I can hear rain outside, but maybe that's an airplane, but it is raining. Anyway, after the good and effective use of time comes the cultivation of good emotion. The development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That's these 7 objectives and 30 principles that I'm reciting now. Then comes the cultivation of good emotional reactions, reacting well to things. Then the performance of good actions. Then the recognition of true limits and true opportunity. And one thing slowly, to never multitask, or to rarely multitask. Now, my 30 principles. Principle number 1 is called the principle of war, to always be fighting against the things that I think are true. Then to the principle of reason and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt, which is how I want to go through life, examining the world and making sense of things. And then 3, the homunculus, the suggestion that we do not have a soul, but all we have is our consciousness that's here as long as we are alive, or as long as we're conscious. Then comes the home of the Anchorhold, the reminder that our consciousness, our homunculus, is utterly alone, really. Even though we can be in a room with others, we're still alone. And then the home of good and evil, reminder that right and wrong, good and bad, are concepts that we hold in our head, not real things out there. And then purpose. And my purposes are to be a good husband and father, to live a virtuous life, helping to improve the well-being of others, their happiness, where it doesn't come at the expense of others, at the undue expense of others. And then the pursuit of my sharing my book, going alone. And then the atomic principle, everything is made of little bits and pieces. And then the principle of nature, everything has some particular nature. And then the pirate ride, the suggestion that free will is an illusion. And then maturity, and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude, which constitute a mature frame set, mental frame set. And then the social principle, we're social creatures, we need each other. And then public speaking, a reminder to use few words, carefully chosen words, and deliberate words, and to never gossip. And to that end, I could slow down a little bit. I'm going a little fast. I'll stumble if I keep this up. Next is temperance, and the sub-principles of suffering, simplicity, and apathy, where I control my consumption of life, both the pleasurable and the difficult. And then the horror show. Life is a horror show, and boy, did I encounter a good one yesterday. I won't share it with you. There's no need for you to be subject to that. But I tell you, if I told you what I learned yesterday, something happening in this area. If I told you what I learned yesterday, it would bother you as much as it bothers me. Maybe not quite as much because it's not as immediate for you. Something happened on my walk yesterday, and I was stopped by an elderly woman with a Scottish accent walking her dog, and she had a message for me. And that message was horrible. It wasn't an assault on me or anything. It wasn't mean in any way. It was basically enlisting my aid for something that had happened in the neighborhood that has haunted me ever since she told me about it. And I don't criticize her. I don't blame her. And I would have told her the same thing. If I was the one that carried that message, I would have stopped her as well and said the same thing. So it's just the fact of the horror of life. That's the horror show. That's why I have a principle to remind myself of that. Although I don't need to remind myself that often when things like that happen. Jeez Louise. And then the next principle is called that which must be borne, carried. And the message that she gave me is a good example of that. And I'm glad she told me. I want to know. Because that's the only way I could do something about it. Potentially. Next comes the Feast of Offal, when we've had enough and we let everybody know about it. Or when others have enough and they tell us all about it. I try not to engage in the former or consume the latter, and therefore I do not participate in the feast. That's what I try to do. Next comes distraction and agency in the great indifference. We have our work and our play and our families and our dramas and our horror to distract us, and our love and beauty, actually, for that matter, to distract us from the awful fact that the universe appears empty. We are alone. So far. Or at least there doesn't appear to be any God. So maybe we'll find other aliens out there, but other because we'd be aliens to them. But it doesn't appear that there's any deity, or at least there's none that are making their presence known to us. And so that they are just as good as not being there, if they don't manifest in the universe or interact with it in any way, any discernible way. That position feels weak at that when I say it that way. Because someone could say, yeah, that's the nature of God, right? He or it is there, but hidden. But then that's a stone that any proposition of deity can hide under, and therefore it renders itself not worth holding on to, because it's too good a hiding place. Okay, now continuing. What did I do? I just did that which must be borne, right? Yeah. Next comes the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else or be anything or be doing anything else or be anybody else. But to be okay with where I am, what I am, and what I'm doing. Who I am. Then comes the Path of Wildness, which is a way into and through new life by collecting facts, giving ourselves time to think, and then making a decision, maybe nudged along by our gut instinct. Then comes the risk of avoiding risk, the deep risk of life of not spending time to get to know ourselves, and the difficult and the easy risk of getting a career and a family and an education and a job, not in that order. Easy is hard, but it's much easier than finding ourselves and doing something about that. That's hard. That's really hard. The risk is that we might not do either, or we might not do both. We might just focus, for example, on the surface level risks, and then forever be wondering who we might be, or focusing on the deep level risk and never enjoying the fruits of family and community and home, those more settled things, or maybe not enjoying it as fully as we could. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Maybe you can. Maybe you can go after the deep stuff and have all that other stuff. I mean, I know you can. You can do both. That's the trick. Next comes sin and damnation, where the sins in my worldview are falsity, credulity, hope, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. All of those contribute to living a damned life. Next comes complete oblivion, the suggestion that when we're dead, there's nothing left, nothing after that. We won't see our loved ones again. We won't have a chance to make up with any sour words that we departed on, and there won't be any other justice. But don't worry, you won't be around to know that. So I guess there's some solace in oblivion. Next comes complete oblivion, great life adventure, one or more experiences in life that contribute to who we make ourselves into. And then the season of philosophy, a time to record what we've learned along the way, especially what the Muse tells us. And then the bullseye aim, striving for the mark but usually missing. The uphill climb, step, step, step. Turn around, look at the view. Wow. Arena and utility. Life is this arena where we get to use our principles like tools. Nothing is enough. Reminder to simplicity. And then finally, the principle of fun. A reminder to have a good time, which I need to do more of. I tend to be like Jack, work, work, work. There, I did it. Okay, now my plan for the day. It's a pretty simple day. After I finish this, I'll read the Bible. I'm still in Proverbs. And then I'm going to, I don't know, should I take the dogs out? I'll let the sun come up a little more. I'll open the back door so they can go out in the yard if they want to. I don't think they'll want to. But I'll go down and I'll prepare the dogs breakfast. As soon as the sun, and then I'll come back up here and I'll read. And then I just need to start my house cleaning too. I'll do that a little later. And then really I need to get myself some reading, give myself some fun, right? And then I'll take the dogs out as soon as the sun comes up far enough. Like I said, the door will be open if they want to go out. And then come back, we'll have breakfast, do all my house chores. Miko and I will do our shopping, we'll get lunch in somewhere. Maybe I'll come back and take the dogs for a longer walk if the sun's out, and call it a day. Go on dinner too. A very pedestrian day, I think. Thanks for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe.